All right, I'm here with Pastor Will Barlow. He is a speaker here at this event. How are you liking it? How's the conference going?
It's going great. I was here at the first Converge 6 years ago, and it's funny. My kids were not here last time. My oldest son I'm walking around the first day, and everyone I come into contact with, he's like, "Oh, you know this person too, Daddy?
Yeah.
You know all these people." I'm like, "I don't know everyone here, buddy, but I know some people."
Right.
So it's been great to see people again. Yeah.
Yeah, 6 years ago, the first Converge. So you were here for that. I think a lot of people here now were at that first one as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about more about your presentation, which I thought was great. So it was the first speaker for the whole event. You came in and you talked about building bridges versus building walls, right? And you talked about humility and gentleness. And I just wanted to pick your brain more. So why do you think that's what God put on your heart to talk about
Yeah.
here at the event?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Unitarian movement, and over my time, I've seen a lot of different people go a lot of different directions with the way their ministries have worked, or maybe one ministry didn't work out, and so they started their own thing separately. And I think one of the things I've seen over and over and over again is people that should be able to work together haven't been able to work together for one reason or another. There's also a lot of work that Dale and other people have done on the history of the Unitarian movement that shows, like in the 1830s and 40s, why the very popular Unitarian movement of that era did not end up like sort of taking over American Christianity, and how it just sort of fizzled out in the Northeast and then eventually became Unitarian Universalism.
Right.
And so, on one hand, I've seen toxic wall builders firsthand. I've seen people who could have worked together but didn't because of ego, or because their doctrinal lines were way too harsh, or whatever the reason might be. And I know historically, too, that our movement has suffered because of a lack of bridge building, of doing bridge building the right way, and excuse me, for wall building the right way, in terms of gatekeeping the doctrines and certain things that are important. Like I said, why we slept into Unitarian Universalism. So I think over the course of our movement, I've seen both, and both done well and both done poorly. And so it's really my hope that my goal was to help us see the benefit of being unified and what would actually get us to being unified. Because I think a lot of people out there, and I didn't mention this in my talk, but I think it's easy to fall into this Western modern trap of thinking that Christianity's up here. And Christianity's not up here. Well, it has to be, I guess, on some level up here, but it really has to be in the way that we live and the way that we act around other people.
Yeah, right, of course.
And so, if we're walking out without humility, without gentleness, then we're going to get division and strife and all the things that we see. And so, we don't want that. We want to avoid that.
Yeah.
And so,
I have to say, I think it was a great reminder for me. One, just because, I'm sort of new to the Unitarian community, and I've seen some of the division which doesn't seem justified or necessary. And also, I think particularly in my trying to outreach and like YouTube content, I lack humility, and I can lack being gracious. And I know sometimes debates, it's sort of different than if just a conversation with people. But I think just across the board, it was such a great reminder. And just to like open up with that, I found super powerful for the conference. I thought that was awesome. So another question. So you said that you grew up Unitarian. So you've pretty much always been a Unitarian.
That's right.
All right, he's lucky, guys. All right, he got up. All of us were over here struggling through Trinitarianism for a while. No, okay. So what would you say are 1 to 3 of the best reasons why you just think Unitarianism is true?
Yeah. The number one reason I think is the Bible. If you look at the Bible, you just read it. I think the surface level understanding of the scriptures is Unitarian. Starting with the Old Testament or Hebrew scriptures, moving to the New Testament. I think that's the strongest argument. What shocked me as a 20-year-old, I was studying abroad in Scotland. What shocked me is I started reading the Church Fathers. And I had a girlfriend before this who was Greek. She was Bulgarian Orthodox. And I had always been told, Church Fathers, that's the bludgeon they use against you. But all the Church Fathers, they were all Trinitarian. I started reading the early Church Fathers. When I realized that they were not Trinitarian, that just absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I kept reading, Tertullian and Origen. I'm reading all these guys, and for the first time, I'm 20 years old, and I was always taught that they were all Trinitarian. I'm like, none of them are Trinitarian, you know? And so I think the historical argument is another really good reason to be Unitarian. It's really hard to get there in the first, 350 years after Christ. And so I think for me, those are the two primary reasons. Certainly there are many biblical reasons I could give, but those are really the two big reasons.
That's so relatable to me. I was actually telling someone else I was speaking with too that when I first started to study about Trinitarianism, right? Like I wanted to study to defend the Trinity, to defend, the core Christian doctrines as I understood them. I realized that I wasn't really a Trinitarian. I was like a heretic. like the way that I thought about it. And I think that's where most lay people are, right? So I think that's so relatable. All right, my last question would be, how would you say that the Unitarian understanding on God's nature and Christology has helped you practically in your life, right? Versus the Trinitarian paradigm, right?
Well, I'll give you a name it's a very hot name right now. He's definitely not a Unitarian. He's a Trinitarian. John Mark Comer has done a lot of stuff on Christian living, obviously. And one of the things he's done is practicing the way. And we were a couple of people in our church were taking his class recently on practicing the way. And I was looking online at some of the backlash against the class. And, I don't agree with everything he says in the class. He's openly a Trinitarian. But one of the things that he tries to do in that class that I really appreciate is he tries to make following Jesus something that seems attainable. And for me, that's the number one advantage of Unitarianism, because they have to do this dance where it's like, well, he was God, but we can also follow him because the Bible says we can follow him. Okay, well, if he's really God, then how can we follow him? There's not a Trinitarian that I've ever heard, including Comer, who's answered that question sufficiently. And so for me, in my mind, knowing that he was a total and complete human being, like Hebrews says, made just like us in every way, tempted in all things, yet without sin, that I can look at his life and I can say, look, I may not do this 100% of the time. I may do it 90% of the time. I may do it 75% of the time, but I know it's attainable. I know 100% is attainable. I know I can put away my unrighteous anger. I know I can be kind, and I can pray for my enemies. When they're beating me up, I can pray for them. So I can't. These things are all available. And the amazing thing, and the thing that's really powerful about that is, you see the prayer that Jesus had on his lips on the cross, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. It's almost identically the prayer that Stephen has while he's being stoned in the book of Acts. So it's like Stephen thought that this was available. He thought that there was a way to live the Jesus way of life, that he could actually do it. And he did. He did it. He made it. And so it's attainable. We can do it.
Wow, that is so powerful, so true. Man, I appreciate you taking your time to answer folks. We're here. You've heard it from Will Barlow himself. And man, I appreciated your message again. Thank you so much.